Gems of Buddhist Wisdom. Moral Conduct, SILA, 22. By Phra Sasana Sobhana, Thailand. SILA or moral conduct is the principle of human behavior that promotes orderly and peaceful existence in a community. Rules of moral conduct are to be found in every religion. They may resemble other codes of conduct to a greater or lesser degree depending on the teacher or religious system from which they originated. Usually they comprise lists of actions from which to abstain, implying that any actions not covered by the prohibitions are permissible. A good example is afforded by the 5 SILAs of Buddhism, namely to abstain from taking the life of sentient beings, to abstain from taking possession of anything that has not been given by its owner, to abstain from sexual misconduct, to abstain from lying or evil speech, and to abstain from intoxicating drinks which are a primary cause of negligence. These 5 SILAs are the basic principles of Buddhism best known to most people. It is customary for them to be explained during almost every religious ceremony. And those present at the ceremonies generally make a formal declaration of their intention to comply with them. People in Buddhist countries must have seen or heard monks enunciating the SILAs ever since the time when they were still small children and did not understand them. Consequently, it is of interest to consider the extent to which most people realize the importance of the SILAs and what they think of them. Especially as most of the SILAs prescribe a code of conduct that is widely different from the general practice of human beings. Some people favor the SILAs while others do not, as can be gathered from the following instances. The first SILA, the prohibition against the taking of any life, applies not only to humanity but also to creatures of every kind. Both big and small, black ants as well as red ants. Each day a vast number of animals are slaughtered as food, for most people eat meat, while vegetarians are not common. In the field of science, animals are used in many researches and experiments. In the administrative field, arms are used in crime suppression. Law enforcement agencies punish lawbreakers. Belligerents at war use arms to destroy one another. The actions cited here as examples are not regarded as illegal or as running counter to normal worldly practice. Indeed, it may even be considered wrong to abstain from them, as is the case when constables or soldiers fail in their police or military duties. Nowadays many kinds of animals are known to be carriers of microbes and, thanks to the microscope, germs and many sorts of microbes have been detected. Almost everything contains them, even drinking water. Only the larger impurities are caught by the filter, microbes can pass through. So, infinite microbes pass into our throats with each draught of water. It is the same with medicines. Whenever they are used, either externally or internally, they destroy myriads of microbes. Are these microbes to be considered as living beings in the sense of the first SILA, or are they not? If so, perhaps no one can fully comply with it. Besides, some are of the opinion that people who refrain from taking the life of animals should also refrain from eating meat, because it amounts to encouraging slaughter and is no less sinful according to them. The second SILA, taking possession of anything that has not been given by its owner or stealing, is also wrong, even legally speaking. However, there is, for instance, the exception of enemy property in the case of war. The third SILA, adultery, is wrong. One who commits it does not command respect nor does one inspire confidence. Sexual misconduct involving persons with whom conjugal relations should be avoided according to custom, or those who are prohibited by law, or by the Dhamma, is also wrong. So is coercing by physical or even financial means a married or even unmarried person into consenting to such conduct. The purpose of this third SILA is to preserve the respectability of the family of each person concerned and to safeguard its sanctity and inviolability. By the same token, respect of person, place, and property should be customary behavior, as laid down in the book Ethics of Good People, which says, for example, do not intrude into people's homes without invitation. Do not peep into their rooms from outside. It is proper for us to adopt manners derived from the SILAs or moral rules, all of which aim at promoting good behavior and discouraging laxity. The fourth SILA, lying is generally regarded as wrong. Nevertheless, people very seldom speak quite truthfully to one another, and so their word can hardly be relied upon. Sometimes they are unable to speak the truth. For instance, they may have to lie to save themselves from harm, and doctors lie to bolster their patients' morale. Lying under these circumstances may be contrary to the SILA, but it is not entirely contrary to its purpose. This SILA aims at bringing about mutual benefits by adhering to truth and avoiding verbal offenses. Similarly, utterances harmful to another's well-being, for example, malicious, abusive or slanderous speech intended either to deride others or to vaunt oneself, may be truthful. Yet they must be regarded as wrong, because they are contrary to the SILA. It is said that the Lord Buddha himself said only what was truthful, useful, and befitting. He laid down the SILA against lying and discouraged malicious, indecent, and vain speech. The fifth SILA, in spite of the rule prescribing abstention from intoxicating drinks, their consumption does not decrease and authorized distilleries are working at full blast. Liquor shops are well patronized day and night. At receptions, fairs, etc. There are alcoholic drinks, to liven up the party, otherwise they would be dull and drinkers would avoid them. Alcoholic drinks have thus become an income earner which brings in a sizable revenue each year. Practices regarded as right and others regarded as wrong may both be contradictory to the SILAs, as shown by the foregoing instances. All of these indicate that, one increasingly fails to understand the SILAs, to recognize their importance and to appreciate their meaning for one's existence in this world. That is why each of the following, mixed right and wrong, views has its advocates. 1. The principles of SILAs should be altered to suit those who have worldly occupations. For instance, some feel that the first SILA should be changed to allow killing to the extent permissible by law, i.e., only killing which is not authorized by law should be prohibited. Moreover, the fourth SILA should, they feel, be made flexible and lying be allowed when it is done to protect oneself or others. So also with the fifth SILA, when intoxicants are taken only occasionally and not to excess. 2. The principles of the SILAs should be left untouched, but no one need pay attention to them. If those who act thus abide by the law, they should be regarded as satisfactory people. After all, the law is a sort of SILA. It is laid down to ensure the peace and welfare of the public, although it is not entirely based upon the psychological principles and rational morality which are the foundation of the SILAs, a point with which we shall deal later on. 3. The principles of the SILAs should be left unaltered, but heeded and observed only from time to time, according to particular circumstances. Most Buddhists belong to the category of people who act in this way. They do not change the principles of the SILAs, for they are truly interested in them and comply with them occasionally. For instance, some Buddhists do not take alcoholic drinks during a certain period, but subsequently they start drinking again. If they are fishermen or fishmongers, they disregard the first SILA which, if observed, would make fish catching or fish selling impossible. But they may refrain from killing other animals. If they are medical students, they do not entirely follow the first SILA, observance of which would render the use of animals for research and experimentation impossible. But they may observe the SILA whenever it is practical for them to do so, i.e., when it does not hinder them in their profession or in performing their duties. 4. The principles of SILA should remain unaltered and be strictly complied with. Very few hold this view. Even these may have some doubt in regard to microbes. And those who do not adhere strictly to the SILA may raise the same doubt either from curiosity or to contend that the SILA is impracticable. To decide whether microbes are living beings or not, in the sense of the SILA, one should consider the life of the Lord Buddha. Whenever the Lord Buddha fell ill, he allowed Dr. Jivaka Komarabhaka to apply external remedies or give him medicine to be taken internally. Monks were also allowed to take or apply remedies to cure their diseases. Hence, we can conclude that the first SILA does not apply to microbes. If it did, then we could not eat nor drink anything, nor even breathe. SILAs should be rules of conduct that can be followed by everyone in an ordinary, practical manner without having recourse to the aid of such instruments as the microscope. The use of those instruments should be reserved for people engaged in the medical or scientific professions. With regard to the consumption of meat as food, Buddhists themselves are divided into two factions. One faction regards eating meat as being no less wicked than the act of slaughter. It holds that, if meat was not used as food, there would be no cause for the destruction of animals. Hence consumption of meat is directly responsible for their slaughter and is therefore wrong. The Vinaya or disciplinary rule allows monks to eat meat under three conditions. Namely, if they have not seen or heard the animals being slaughtered and have no reason to suspect that the slaughter was for their benefit as opposed to slaughter for sale in general. There are also rules prohibiting monks from eating raw meat or the 10 forbidden kinds of meat, which includes tiger meat and elephant flesh. Buddhists of this category, particularly Theravadan monks, should not be selective and are free to eat without fuss. They must be able to partake of vegetarian food and also of animal food, provided that the three aforementioned conditions are complied with and that the meat is not one of the prohibited kinds. They are expected to accept whatever is offered to them, whether vegetarian or meat of the proper kinds. This is not considered contradictory to the SILA, because the hearts of such Buddhists, especially of the monks, are pervaded with unbounded kindness and compassion towards animals. Never would they cause animals to be killed. Moreover, against the view that eating meat is wrong, they present the following argument. If meat consumption is morally wrong, then the use of hide, bones, horns of animals should be altogether banned. That, too, should be regarded as wrong. Both factions are still at variance on this subject and some of their members are still carrying on the argument. But there are some who do not argue, preferring to leave the whole matter to the individual's own conscience. One should not compel others to accept one's own views. To do that is also mental defilement and therefore to be avoided. If it is asked what purpose the Lord Buddha hoped to serve by laying down silas which prescribe such uncompromising abstention that they can be fully complied with by only very few people, it has to be admitted that no one can claim to know his exact intention in so doing. Nevertheless, one may gather the reason from many principles enunciated in the Dhamma. The Lord Buddha taught us to make a comparison between ourselves and others by saying, all living beings are afraid of punishment and death. Life is dear to all beings, as well as to us. By putting ourselves in their place, we realize that we, individually, should neither kill nor cause others to kill. By this principle of the Dhamma, Lord Buddha wanted us to understand, through entering into one another's feelings, that all living beings love life as much as we do and have no less fear of death. That is why, as a matter of simple justice, the Lord Buddha laid down the first SILA. The second was formulated to promote mutual respect for each other's rights to their own possessions. The third encourages mutual respect for one another's families. The fourth protects our mutual interests by truthfulness. The fifth helps us to avoid carelessness and negligence. If we set store by carefully guarding our wealth, our families, and good faith, then we should not trespass on the rights of others. All the silas or rules of conduct are based solely on the principle of perfect justice. They demonstrate that Buddhism respects the lives, rights, property, and so on, of everyone. This is worldly or conventional truth. If the Buddha had made the silas flexible and adaptable to the wishes of the masses, they would not have been consonant with the nature of perfect justice. Lord Buddha would have shown himself deficient in compassion towards those animals whose slaughter was thus sanctioned. That would not accord with the character of the Buddha, who was filled with compassion towards all sentient beings. Another reason stated at the beginning, is that the silas promote, in particular, a very special benefit. This means that the ultimate outcome of adherence to them is freedom from all defilements. The silas are the first steps towards this goal. Total observance of the silas, though there are only 5 of them, can in itself be a step towards the higher level at which that very special benefit is realized. What is perhaps of particular importance with regard to the silas is to discover why people are, or are not, interested in observing them. Some reasons are as follows. 1. Owing to the strictness of silas, which involve, for example, abstention from taking the life of any living being. Suppose the rules of moral conduct had been laid down in a more accommodating manner, tolerating some of the infringements we have discussed. Would such rules be followed by more people or not? Obviously, no one can say for sure that it would happen, because one gets a general impression that moral rules, in particular those concerning what is regarded as wrong either in the worldly or the legal sense, are all constantly violated, whether the first SILA or any other. This demonstrates that the failure to observe them is not due to their strictness. Usually, one's natural inclination is to suit all actions to one's own comfort and convenience. Every nation has its laws and every religion, its silas. Even where some of the rules are quite flexible and accommodating, it is probable that a few people will violate them. Therefore, the main reason for violation lies with the individual himself. Most people are naturally inclined to disregard or alter the rules to suit their own convenience and are quite capable of doing so. 2. Owing to the individuals themselves. Then why would the individual infringe the rules, even though this is generally and legally regarded as wrong? The causes of such behavior embedded within the individuals themselves are undoubtedly greed, lobha, aversion, dosa, and delusion, moha, which are born in the heart as defilements, kilsa, and, in turn, bring about the absence of shame, hin, or dread of evil, adapa. So if change is needed, it should not take place in the principles of the silas, but be a change of heart, meaning decreasing the kilsas rather than increasing them in such a way that hiriatapa, shame and fear of doing evil, appear in the heart. By so behaving, our ability to comply with the silas will become much greater. Better compliance with the silas does not mean abstention from everything prescribed in them. Abstention from what is worldly or legally regarded as wrong is in itself acceptable conduct. 3. Owing to necessity, such as in the following instances. Infringement of the first SILA in order to protect one's property, life, nation, religion, and king, as happens in battle or when one is dealing with criminals or enemies. Transgression of the second SILA in order to keep oneself alive because of hunger or real poverty. There seems to be no reason for violating the third SILA, since compliance with it would surely not kill anyone. Infringement of the fourth SILA for the sake of one's own welfare. Many of the foregoing instances can be counted as cases of necessity. For example, if one is a fisherman by trade or a medical student. When one asks oneself, for instance, whether it is really necessary to kill or to steal, one realizes that this is very seldom the case. Consequently, even the mere intention not to infringe the silas, except when it is impossible to do otherwise, and to abide by them as far as necessity permits, will make us realize that the 5 silas can be followed, to a great extent, without difficulty or loss of any worldly advantage whatever. 4. Owing to a lack of supporting and complementary dhamma. Lack of dhamma complementary to each of the rules may also be a cause of their infringement. Metta or loving kindness should be cultivated as an aspect of dhamma complementary to the first SILA. Samajiva or right livelihood should be practiced as an aspect of dhamma complementing the second SILA. Santuthita or contentedness with one's spouse is an aspect of dhamma that should be developed to complement the third SILA. Truthfulness is an aspect of dhamma that should be observed to complement the fourth SILA. Carefulness and circumspection should be adhered to as an aspect of dhamma complementing the fifth SILA. Explanations of some of the complementary aspects of dhamma follow. For instance, metta complementing the first SILA, where it exists in any being, banishes all desire to harm. To say nothing of the metta or loving kindness shown by parents to their children, even metta towards pets like dogs and cats is enough to bring about the greatest care for them. Without metta, but with dosa or aversion instead, these pets might easily be destroyed. Right livelihood complementing the second SILA can be explained as follows. If one is lazy in work or adopts a wrong mode of livelihood for one's subsistence, one cannot possibly comply with the second SILA. Since we all have to eat every day, each of us has to get his food without fail and therefore must have a means of living, and a right one at that. 5. Owing to absence of leaders who abide by the SILAs. As an illustration, there is a saying in a Jataka which can be summarized as follows. When a herd of cattle is traveling, if the leading bull strays, the whole herd goes astray. So it is with the people. If the appointed leader practices adhama or unrighteousness, the multitude will also practice it. The whole nation will suffer if that one fails to abide by the Dhamma. When a herd of cattle is traveling, if the leading bull keeps to the proper course, the whole herd will do the same. So it is with the people. If the appointed leader abides by the Dhamma, the multitude will do likewise. The whole nation will be contented if the leader upholds the Dhamma. This Buddhist saying is quite clear. The behavior of the leader is of great consequence to the masses as they will inevitably follow his example. The above reasons for being or not being interested in the observance of moral conduct may, each of them, be of significance in relation to the SILA. In short, whether the SILAs are or are not followed by the individuals comprising society depends on whether or not they bring about contentment in accordance with the level of the followers. In this respect, some have voiced the opinion that the SILAs may be looked upon as fundamental principles to be applied in a way suited to one's own status. What is regarded as suitable will be in conformity with the purpose of the SILAs only if it is adopted without prejudice to others and without favor to oneself. For the purpose of the SILA is to avoid harm to others. Besides, they are the first steps towards concentration, samadhi, and insight, panna. Since observance of the SILAs should not be literal but should accord with their purposes, it will differ somewhat depending on the status or profession of each individual. For instance, observance of the SILAs by the common people who desire peace and contentment for all in the family as well as in the nation, will take one form. That of the monks who desire to attain a higher plane of the Dhamma will take another. Both forms will, however, lead to the goal for which observance of the SILAs was established. Furthermore, SILAs or rules of moral conduct are also the principal factor in national growth, the force that brings about economic prosperity and general contentment. Without SILAs, the productivity of individuals will tend to eliminate and destroy itself. Where the productivity of one individual is high but is detrimental to that of someone else, nothing is added to the community. Rather, the total yield of the community diminishes and consequently it is difficult to promote general progress and prosperity. Even from this point of view, it can be seen that many people observe the SILAs in a way suited to their own status, realizing that the SILAs can bring prosperity to the community. Generally speaking, people in Buddhist countries know how they should observe the SILAs or moral rules. They also know that the 5 SILAs are in no way an obstruction to prosperity of the individual or the country. The cause for concern does not lie in the fact that too many people strictly observe the SILAs, but in the fact that too many people infringe them. This goes so far that even those actions which should be eschewed because they are generally or legally considered harmful, are nevertheless still common. What chiefly needs to be set right lies then, in the individual and in the circumstances already dealt with. If everyone were to behave in a way that lessens kills and generates in the heart enough hiriotapa and if, at the same time, there are circumstances which make for contentment and comfort, such as freedom to carry on one's livelihood in an atmosphere of peace and security and ability to earn enough for oneself and one's family, then there would be no cause to infringe the SILAs and people might even be interested in following the SILAs and complementary Dhamma, such as cultivating metta-loving kindness towards others and diligence in pursuing their livelihood. If the leaders or administrative officers of all ranks were also interested in the SILAs, if they were prepared to abide by them and not to discharge their duties in harmful ways but in a manner beneficial to the people's welfare, if every sector of the community were to concur in maintaining such good behavior, the standard of morality would surely improve. Because the basis of each individual's mind desires to be good, so people readily see the advantages of the SILAs. If earning one's living becomes difficult or dangerous, solutions to such contingencies must be given first priority. In the Buddhist religion, the Lord Buddha taught that the present benefits should be taken care of first. For instance, by being diligent and working for a living. Then, after that, he advised people to attend at the same time to their future benefit. For instance, by having faith in and abiding by the Silas. When there is an outcry about a state of degeneration resulting from disrespect for moral values, youths as well as adults clamor for those values to be upheld, just as is happening at present. But the reasoning set forth in these paragraphs should be remembered, and all of us should join hands in trying to improve the situation by getting at the real cause. Religious teachers can only point the way. The task cannot be undertaken by any single group of people. All sectors of the community should cooperate in accordance with their duties. All of us should perform our duties with honesty. Each should examine his own behavior and make an effort to do away with unwholesome conduct by following the principles of the SILA. Then abiding by the rules of moral conduct would not be difficult, that is, it can be done by requesting from a monk the Silas or by oneself following them, without receiving them from the monks. What is important is one's determination to abide by the Silas, that is to abstain from certain actions. Although such abstention may not be complete in the sense of the perfect Silas and may apply only to actions regarded as wrong and unwholesome in the worldly or legal sense, that is nevertheless better than not to abstain at all. The prescription of perfect SILA, complete in every respect, does not mean that their observance should also be perfect right from the start. No one would be able to manage that. The practice of the Silas should be gradual, step by step, from the lower to the higher stages. That is why the following words are used: I undertake the rule of training to abstain from such and such conduct. This amount to agreeing to train in the Silas or moral rules. It also means that observance of the Silas is still not yet perfect. It is the same with the study of any branch of knowledge. If one is still learning a subject, it means that one does not know it yet to perfection. Anyone who knows it completely does not have to train in it. A person who is still learning should not be held responsible for ignorance of what he has yet to learn. Gems of Buddhist Wisdom. The Buddhist Way to Economic Stability, 23. Venerable M. Pannasha Maha Nayaka Thera. The word manasa, man, had different etymological meanings given it by Eastern scholars in the past. While popular or general Indian tradition traces the origin of the word to Manu, the mythical progenitor of the human race. In the Buddhist texts the derivation of the word is given as manasa asanadya equals manasa man. Because of his highly developed state of mind, as compared to the underdeveloped or rudimentary mental state of the lower animal. According to Buddhist thought, man ranks as the highest of beings due to the vast potential of the human mind. Kautilya's Arthasastra and Brahaspati's Arthasastra, two famous ancient treatises on economics, were both written after the Buddha's lifetime. They held one common feature, and that, under title of Arthasastra, both writers had written on politics and economics, leaving out the most important factor of ethics and the moral development of man himself. Of the Pali term artha, Sanskrit artha, which has more than one meaning according to Buddhism. The word as signifying success is used at two separate levels, i.e. artha meaning success, and uttamatha meaning the highest success. The latter concerns man's mental and spiritual development resulting in the realization of supramundane knowledge of the Four Noble Truths. In the conquest of self and attainment to spiritual perfection or arahanthood. Generally speaking, the word artha as success relates to the various aspects of man's socio-economic development, such as the economy, politics, education, health, law, and morality of a society. It refers to social progress due to the harmonious unification of all the above factors, contributing to the prosperity and peaceful coexistence of a people. Except in the case of legal administration of the Sangha, no single discourse of the Buddha deals fully on any one of the above factors of social progress. Yet reading through the numerous discourses, or suttas, it is possible to develop a fully consistent and complete viewpoint of the Buddha stand on each of the above topics drawn from the various discourses of the Buddha. A socio-economic system based on Buddhist principles and practices could easily be formulated to suit today's modern progressive society. In recent times many books have been written on the subject of economics and economic theory. All of them either from the capitalist or socialist point of view. Neither of these systems pays attention to, nor considers the inner development of man as an important factor in the growth of society. Hence there has been a rapid deterioration in human values and standards of behavior in all classes of society. Science and technology have taken gigantic strides forward to send man to the moon, and it will not be long before he visits other planets. But fears are expressed that if the present trend towards moral degeneration continues, before long it would be impossible to differentiate human action from that of the animal. This fear is not baseless. It would be a great tragedy indeed were man to turn beast even in one of the many bestial aspects of behavior belonging to the lower animals. Thus what the world requires today is a socially stable economic system which yields the highest place to man's moral development and cultivation of human values. The Buddha lived in a society entangled and confused by 62 divergent views and 108 types of craving. There were hundreds who went about in search of an escape from this entanglement of views. Once the Buddha was asked the question, Jata Sutta, the inner tangle and the outer tangle. This world is entangled in a tangle. Who succeeds in disentangling this tangle? The Buddha, who explained that all these tangles have mind as the forerunner, answered thus: when a wise man, established well in virtue, develops consciousness and understanding, men as a bhikkhu ardent and sagacious, he succeeds in disentangling this tangle. Realizing the importance of the external factors in man's endeavor towards disentangling himself from the inner tangle, the Buddha gave many discourses on the ways and means of overcoming the outer tangle. Some of these teachings were meant only for the bhikkhus. Others were only for laymen. The rest were meant for both bhikkhus and laymen, although in the latter case, the discourses were mainly directed to the bhikkhus. In one such discourse, he approved the acceptance by the Bhikkhus of the four requisites, namely robes, food, shelter and medicine. Man could live without all other modern contraptions, but for life to go on, these four requisites are essential. Wealth is required by man to obtain these four requisites and to meet his other needs. The Noble Eightfold Path, which could be classified under right values and right action, enables man to achieve the highest ends. For economic stability and well-being, the Buddhist system stresses three factors in the Vyagapajja Sutta. 1. Uthanasampada, production of wealth through skilled and earnest endeavor. 2. Arakhasampada, its protection and savings. 3. Samajivakata, living within one's means. 1. Uthanasampada. The Buddha, when encouraging the production of wealth, makes special reference to 6 job ranges prevalent at that time. 1. Agriculture. 2. Trade. 3. Cattle breeding. 4. Defense services. 5. Government services. 6. Professional services. India was predominantly an agricultural country. Hence many references in the discourses were made to agriculture. For example, in the Satapannapavadana Sutta it is mentioned that providing of irrigation facilities results in yielding continuous merit. In the Samyutta Nikaya it is mentioned that the greatest asset for agriculture is cattle. While in the Sutta Nipata, cattle from whom man obtains milk, ghee, curd, butter, and whey, of much nutritious value, are described as the best friends of a country. In developing countries, water and draft power provided by cattle are basic needs for agriculture. In the discourse pertaining to a layman's happiness, domestic and otherwise, Kahapati Sukha, foremost is mentioned the satisfaction derived by a layman from the possession of wealth obtained through righteous means. Athisukha. However, the Buddha warns man against the tendency to become a slave to the mere accumulation of wealth for its own sake. Ibis would lead to both physical and mental suffering later. Adequate means of livelihood to support oneself and family, to help relatives and friends, and to distribute among the needy and the deserving, would lead to contentment and inner satisfaction. This in turn would result in the moral and spiritual development of man. In the Kudadanta Sutta, the Buddha shows how peace and prosperity and freedom from crime comes to a country through the equitable distribution of wealth among its people. He says, long ago, 0 Brahman, there was a king by name Wide Realm, Mahavijita. Mighty with great wealth and large property with stores of silver and gold, of aids to enjoyment, of goods and corn. With his treasure houses and his garners full. Now when Yang Wide Realm was once sitting alone in meditation, he became anxious at the thought, I have in abundance all the good things a mortal can enjoy. The whole wide circle of the earth is mine by conquest to possess. 'Twere well if I were to offer a great sacrifice that should ensure me weal and welfare for many days. And he had the Brahman, his chaplain, called, and telling him all that he had thought. He said, so I would fain, 0 Brahman, offer a great sacrifice, let the Venerable One instruct me how, for my will and my welfare for many days. Thereupon the Brahman who was chaplain said to the king's country, Sire, is harassed and harried. There are dacoits abroad who pillage the villages and townships, and who make the roads unsafe. Were the king, so long as that is so, to levy a fresh tax, verily his majesty would be acting wrongly. But perchance his majesty might think, I will soon put a stop to these scoundrels' game by degradation and banishment, and fines and bonds and death. But their license cannot be satisfactorily put a stop to do so. The remnant left unpunished would still go on harassing the realm. Now there is one method to adopt to put a thorough end to this disorder. Whosoever there be in the king's realm who devote themselves to keeping cattle and the farm, to them let his majesty the king give food and seed corn. Whosoever there be in the king's realm who devote themselves to trade, to them let his majesty the king give wages and food. Then those men, following each his own business, will no longer harass the realm, the king's revenue will go up. The country will be quiet and at peace, and the populace, pleased one with another and happy, dancing their children in their arms, will dwell with open doors. The king Wide Realm, 0 Brahman, accepted the word of his chaplain, and did as he had said. And the men, following their business, harassed the realm no end. And the king's revenue went up. And the country became quiet and at peace. And the populace, pleased one with another and happy, dancing their children in their arms, dwelt with open doors. So King Wide Realm had his chaplain called, and said, the disorder is at an end. The country is at peace. Dialogues of the Buddha, Part I, pages 175-6. 2 Arakha Samappada. This means the worldly happiness derived from the constant protection of one's wealth, that has been righteously obtained, from burglary, fire, floods etc. As the Buddha has extolled the virtue of savings, this factor too could be considered in this context. Obtaining money on credit, or loans, was prevalent even during the Buddha's time. Persons like Anathapindika were the bankers of the day. The Buddhist texts make references to instances where he gave loans both to the state as well as to ordinary people. However, Buddhism does not approve of excessive borrowing, for as the saying goes, borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry. And the Buddha's advocacy of a life free from debts, Ananasukha, as being conducive to the happiness of a layman supports this statement. In the Samanaphala Sutta, the Buddha compares the Samanaphala, or fruit of a recluse's life, to the happiness derived by a person who, having been in debt, frees himself of all his debts, and now supports his family and children from the savings he has managed to put aside. The importance of making savings from one's earnings is stressed in this manner. In general, the Buddha gives details of the proper use of one's earnings. But in the Sigaloveda Sutta, he admonishes particularly a big magnate, Sigala, to apportion his savings into 4 and to spend one part of it for his daily upkeep and that of his family. 2 portions were to be invested in his business, and the 4th put aside for any emergency. 3 Sanjivakata. This is the third of the 3 basic principles in the Buddhist economic system. A person should spend reasonably in proportion to his income, neither too much nor too little. In the discourse relating to the householder's happiness, Gahapati Sukha, enjoyment of one's income appropriately and wisely, Bhaga Sukha, is given as one of the four factors conducive to lay happiness. In the Pattakama Sutta, the manner in which a person should spend his wealth is given in detail as follows. 1. Expenditure on food and clothing and other needs. 2. Maintenance of parents, wife, and children and servants. 3. For illness and other emergencies. 4. For charitable purposes. 5. For the performance of the following. 1. Treating one's relatives. 2. Treating one's visitors. 3. Offering alms in memory of the departed. 4. Offering merit to the deities. v. Payment of state taxes and dues in time. The Buddha extols simple living as being more conducive to the development of one's mind. A society progresses to the extent the mind of the individual is developed. Administration of such a society becomes easier, when law and order is well established. Knowing this, ancient kings in Sri Lanka gave much publicity to the contents of the Ariyavamsa Sutta. In this sutta, preached by the Buddha for the benefit of the bhikkhus, the latter are exhorted to be contented with 1. The robes, clothes, they receive, whether coarse or fine. 2. Alms, food, they receive, whether unpalatable or delicious. 3. The abodes, houses, they receive, whether simple or luxurious. 4. Meditation, development of mind. Becoming content with the first three, it is possible to reduce economic restlessness, and at the same time to inculcate the habits and values of simple living. Through meditation, the human mind develops itself both morally and spiritually, resulting in reducing social disharmony and insurrection which arise first in the minds of men and then put into action. Peace and progress of a country is thus assured. In this modern world, although highly advanced in science and technology, with its rapid expansion of knowledge, there appears to be a steady deterioration of human values. Present-day politics, the economy, and educational systems are some of the more important reasons for this state of affairs. In this context, it is considered desirable that the existing political and economic thought and educational systems should be changed so as to give priority to the development of human values. Buddhism is both a path of emancipation and a way of life. As a way of life, it interacts with the economic, political and social beliefs and practices of the people. It is felt that the time is now most opportune to make known to the world each of the above aspects of society within the framework of Buddhist ethics and the basic principles of Buddhism. The progress of a country depends ultimately on the progress of the individual. Over 2,500 years ago, the Buddha was born into a confused society entangled in various views regarding life and thought in general. Through Buddhism, it was possible to disentangle this tangle of views and to reduce this confusion. Today too, in this confused society, it is generally believed that Buddhism could again help in lighting a path through the darkness of this confusion. Special thanks to Phra Mahasamukh Saksri.